You saw somebody drowning, would you throw him a life preserver?
So now I'm drowning?
You just don't know it.
If there's one thing to take away from this episode, it's that the hive mind believes that Carol is drowning. And you know what? I don't think they're wrong. We all agree Carol is trying to reverse the happiness virus, but let's ask the real question. Why? What is the engine that keeps the world's most miserable person moving forward? I mean, we know it's not like Helen's infected and she's motivated to bringing her back to normal. Is it wanting to prove the hive mind wrong? Is it to be known as the one who fixed the world back to normal? What is Carol's reasonings to keep moving forward? Well, this episode, it looks like Carol's got an idea of what unlimited possibilities are at her disposal, and I've got a theory of what that might be. What's going on, everybody? We are back with another deep dive into what's becoming one of the most uniquely captivating shows on television. Today, we're breaking down Carol and her ongoing battle with the hive mind, but also talking about how this episode illustrates Carol's complex eternal world. We're talking about grief, control, and a whole lot of self-sabotage. With all that said, let's jump right into this episode. Full spoilers ahead. We get our countdown that's taking us back to 2,617 days, 10 hours, 30 minutes, and 41 seconds into the past before the journey began. As we flash back to sometime around 2017, where we are at a hotel made of ice in Norway, where we find Helen and Carol are vacationing. Now, while in this romantic koi suite, we see Helen is on cloud 9 in amazement of this whole unique frozen Norway experience, courtesy of travel writer Rick Steves, as we see Carol is hung up over the fact that she spent so much money to be here, only to discover that they'll be sleeping on an ice bed. It's important to note that this whole scene is meant to show us that Carol does indeed live up to the hype of the world's most miserable person because she's being ungrateful. She's unsatisfied even when experiencing moments of happiness. Now, another example of showing how unsatisfied she is, we see after learning that one of her books at this time made the bestsellers list. We see Carol was more concerned about where exactly on the list her book landed instead of just simply being happy to be on the list to begin with. Now, this scene also reminds us just how much Helen grounded Carol. Despite her attitude towards happiness or being ungrateful, Helen remained balanced. She was the one to make sure that Carol was happy about the small and the big wins. Even if Carol hated it or was unsatisfied with success, Helen was her North Star. Now we watch as the couple's looking up at the northern lights as Helen's taking it all in, but Carol's thinking about it looking like a screensaver and she has to use the restroom until we see Helen has her hush up as they take in the moment together. Now, as we talked about with episode 1 breakdown, I couldn't help but to notice that Carol was wearing purple in this scene. Carol's wearing a purple scarf and they're talking about how the lights are going to turn purple in the sky. These are just more examples of how I mentioned in episode 1, like I feel like the color purple is signifying Carol's potential inevitable transformation at some point in this season. Now, I want to know what you all thought of the look on Carol's face as she's sitting next to Helen as they're both looking up in the sky. Is this the face of a person who doesn't care about this moment? I don't think so. As she'll talk about later in this episode, I believe this was a moment that Carol actually was happy. She put aside her pessimistic feelings and she really took in the moment with the person she loves the most. What an interesting literal cold open, yes, pun intended, but let's talk about the things that I took away from this scene. I want to go back to the opening lines from Bjorn, the hotel guy.
As you know, the human race grew up alongside glaciers during the ice ages.
The cold stimulates ancient nerves, makes you feel a primal connection to the world.
Now, of course, he could have just been simply sharing some fun facts about Norway, but I think this could be important at some point. We know the hive mind struggles to process Carol's negativity. What if extremely cold environments like we see in this flashback can be key? What if staying below 0 temperatures can temporarily or permanently revert the infection to their original state, reinvigorating those ancient nerves and original consciousness? I also think about Bjorn describing the meticulous process of building the hotel, only for it all to melt every single summer. I couldn't help but think of the constant countdown that we see going up and down on the show since the virus spread worldwide. What if this virus is only temporary and during a particular period it goes dormant during a time but returns, or maybe it never does return? Now, speaking to the latter, if this is just a temporary virus, what if the idea from these aliens or whoever sent this virus to Earth is to show humans just how perfect of a feeling true selfless happiness is, and once they've experienced that happiness, and once this virus goes away, there's hope that people and humanity would want to continue their own lives of a life full of happiness after experiencing it in its purest form. And lastly, Carol mentions how it was so cold in that ice room that she could have saved $100,000 and froze her own eggs in there. Now, of course, that simply could have been a joke by Carol, but it could also be that they were trying to have kids at some point. Now, the question is, if that is true, what ended up happening? Could the attempts have failed due to complications, or even worse, did they lose a child due to Carol's negligence once under the influence? Now again, it could have just simply been a joke, or if it is to be true, we don't know the exact outcome, but the context could be clear. Carol and Helen had shared a vision of a future family that was taken away from them potentially. Now back to present day, it is now day 3, hour 3, 11 minutes and 13 seconds into this new way of the world since the joining. Sosha now on the plane with Carol, and now with some trustworthy pilots with over 51,000 hours of flight experience, and not some random TGI Fridays employee like before, but Carol still finds it even more weird now.
And between the two of them, they've piloted every variant of this capable and trustworthy Airbus A330 aircraft. You're in good hands.
That's weirder than the gal from TGI Fridays. You doing this because she freaked me out?
That's an affirmative, Carol.
Please stop that.
Again, never satisfied. We see Carol taking some pills, more on that later, but as of right now, after the unsuccessful meeting in the last episode with the uninfected, Carol now wants to know anything and everything about the non-English speakers who are uninfected, in hopes to have a much different and even better experience about saving the world than what she had before. Zosha gives Carol some basic background information on each of the non-English speaking uninfected. We've got an interesting mix of cat lovers, dancers, fishermen, and a potential future pony trainer ranging from the ages of 8 to 89. Now, unfortunately for Carol, none of them are doctors or scientists. Now, Carol mentions if there's any information on the newly discovered uninfected by the name of Manusos, who was mentioned back in episode 2, but the thing is, he's managed to avoid communicating with the hive mind since being discovered. Sounds like him and Carol would get along perfectly. Now, Carol has Zosha call him despite the language barrier, and it's here where Carol quickly realizes why it's been so hard to get a hold of him, because he doesn't answer their call. The second call, he answers and hears Carol's voice, and he immediately hangs up. Now, they say the third time's a charm as they call him for the third time, and Carol gets him and she rushes her introduction, but he cuts her off and says something in Spanish that translates to "stop messing with me, leave me alone, bitches," as he hangs up on her. Mind you, they're thousands of feet in the air, and I'm thinking to myself, Carol better keep her temper down, because if she gets upset and directs her anger towards Zosha and the hive mind, this plane ride isn't going to end well. Now, Carol has Zosha call him back immediately, and he answers again, but this time around, Carol doesn't let him get the last word as he tells him, "Chinga tu madre, cabrón!" I won't say the actual words, but F your mother, you little bastard, as we see Zosha apologizes on his behalf as Carol rushes off to the bathroom. Now, you notice Carol is a bit unbalanced and wobbly in the bathroom, and these effects could be due to those pills that we saw earlier in the scene. Now, before moving on, let's talk about Carol's potential new best friend, Manusos. He seems to be the person that Carol's been looking for, because he seems to want nothing to do with her, and more importantly, he doesn't want to communicate with the hive mind. Now, the question is, could he be in Carol's camp by wanting to fix the world, or is he content with being alone? I'm going to make a bet that we're going to be probably seeing him sooner rather than later, because I'm sure he's seen in one of the main trailers leading up to the show, so I'm excited for these two to meet, because I think they're going to be the best of friends. Now back home, but before heading inside, we see Zosha and the rest of the hive mind have collected Carol's mail, and they think that she's going to be happy to find what's inside the box. Now, after going through some bills, she comes across something with Helen's name on it and takes a moment to gather herself. Now you'll notice that Carol tossed out the other bills because they don't matter anymore, but she kept the ones with Helen's name on it. Now Carol doesn't toss out the box as she opens it, and inside she finds a massager that helps with pain and aches and relieves stress. Carol calls the helpline, and Zosha explains that it was ordered by Helen because Carol was so stressed during the tour and Helen bought it as a surprise homecoming present. Even in death, Helen's still making sure that Carol is being taken care of. It's here Helen demands the hive mind forget everything about Helen and to never bring her up ever again. Only Carol gets to remember her as she hangs up the phone and looks outside briefly to where she buried Helen. Day 4, hour 12, 31 minutes and 22 seconds. It's now the next day and we find Carol watching the classic Golden Girls on television as the doorbell rings. Now in this scene, there's a quick shot of a bottle of pills that I'm assuming are the same pills that Carol took on the airplane and also later in this episode. Now this is called alprazolam, which is used to relieve symptoms of anxiety, including anxiety caused by depression. It's also used to treat panic disorders as well. Now, it's safe to assume that she's been taking these pre-joining event, which adds more to her backstory to us, knowing that she has a history with alcohol, but now we know she has a history with potentially anxiety and depression, and now with Helen gone, you'll have to imagine that things have only got worse. Now, speaking to the Golden Girls that Carol was watching, I believe the episode was titled Dorothy's New Friend, which comes from Season 3, Episode 15, which aired January 16th of 1988. Now, having this particular episode in the background was brilliant on the choice of the showrunners. In that scene, Rose was telling the rest of her friends a story about a mean old lady who never smiled. Now, the kids thought that this old woman was hateful, but as it turns out, she couldn't smile because she was born without the necessary muscles to do so. Now, you can make the connections between the old lady and Carol. Is she mean, or is Carol just simply incapable of showing happiness? Now, Carol looks outside to find a person in a red car dropping off a silver platter at her front door. Now, inside that platter is a delicious prepared meal that the hive mind knows Carol loved all the way back in 2012, but of course, we see Carol closes it up and heads inside and makes another call to the hive mind. Now, the hive mind got her that food because they knew her refrigerator was low, and they knew that because they did keep the promise of never bringing up Helen's memories again because they're off limits, but they got the information from the housekeeper hired before they went on their book tour. Now, this attempted convenience is the last straw for Carol.
I want you to leave me alone.
As she tosses out the perfectly good food in the trash and heads on to the grocery store. Watching Carol continuing to reject the hive mind's compassion, their convenience, and their attempts to alleviate her stress, it all boils down to control. If this world is broken, Carol has to be the one to fix it, and right now, it looks like she has to do it alone. Now we watch Carol driving up to the local grocery store, still driving the truck with the unicorn on it. Now remember, she could have the hive mind deliver her any vehicle of her desire, but she chooses to continue to use this truck. Now obviously, besides the convenience factor, I wonder if Carol has an attachment to this truck. Similar to how she kept the bills with Helen's name on it, maybe keeping this truck is maybe her way of grieving, and it's another reminder of Helen because technically that was the last place that she was with her when she was alive. Now inside the grocery store, Carol finds it completely empty. Talk about first world problems in an apocalypse, right? Now we watch as Carol calls a hive mind and she learns that they are consolidating resources to centralize useful items for distribution.
Is there something specific you need? We can deliver to you anytime, anywhere.
I am not going to call you every time I need something. I don't want you waiting on me. I am a very independent person, okay? I always have been. I fend for myself. I just want my sprouts back.
Now, Carol nicely requests that they bring her sprouts back, and thinking that would be maybe a few days to restock the entire store, we watch as Zosha tells her that it'll just be momentarily. What felt like seconds later, maybe 8 to 10 trucks arrived, stocked to the brim, ready to restock the entire store at Carol's request. Now, it's the same day, but we fast forward about an hour after the hive mind arrived, and the project Restock the Grocery Store is now complete. I would love to watch some behind the scenes of this very scene. I always wonder when shows do like this, did they completely literally remove all the groceries, or did they go to like an abandoned store, or did they create this as a set and then they went to like a fully operational store with food fully stocked in the store? Again, I just love seeing these type of scenes within this show because it really showcases just how quick and efficient the hive mind is. But I also want to take note of this being an example of Carol witnessing the hive mind doing whatever she wants. Keep that in mind for later. Going back to that scene though, it's almost comical how easy that was. To me, it's here the show brilliantly subverts expectations. Now, normally in these apocalyptic end-of-the-world zombie type shows, we watch our survivors having to fight and kill for food while also trying to survive and avoiding the infected at all costs. But here, instead of fighting off raiders for the little bit of food left in this world, we see a simple request brings instant abundance. Imagine for a moment being in Carol's shoes. The possibilities are endless. If this was me, I would have exotic foods from around the globe delivered to my mansion that I would have lived in, and also inviting any and every celebrity or any other artist that I love to come hang out with me. But for Carol, it's a double-edged sword. Convenience comes with a perceived loss of control. It's now nighttime, and I don't know if this is Carol being petty or she doesn't know how to cook, or Helen maybe cooked all their meals, or maybe they had like a personal chef. But after all that of restocking that grocery store, we watch Carol watching the Golden Girls while eating a microwave dinner, and it looks like she's not even enjoying it. Now, this small act could also speak to potentially deeper emotional neglect or a lack of motivation rooted in her depression. Even with the endless options she was given at the grocery store, she chose the path of least effort, perhaps reflecting her own internal emptiness. Now, after experiencing a not-so-good microwave dinner, to make matters worse, all the lights go out, and not just in Carol's house, but across town. But almost instantly, her house and her neighbor's lights flicker back on, as Zosha calls, apologizing for the scare, explaining it was for conservation.
Carol, is there anything we could do to cheer you up?
Cheer me up? Why? I'm fine. I'm so happy. There is nothing wrong with me that a hand grenade wouldn't fix. You got one of those? Because I think that would be the perfect topper for the greatest week in human history.
Headed back to watching more of the Golden Girls, we see Carol taking her meds, but instead of drinking water, she takes some vodka, which of course is not good when taking any medication. This being a direct act of self-sabotage, a clear sign of her unaddressed pain and refusal to care for herself. Now, outside, Zosha wearing blue, just like the car she's driving in, remembering that blue is a color that represents peace, trust, and loyalty. Zosha is here to deliver the hand grenade Carol sarcastically requested over the phone. Now, as Zosha is leaving, Carol surprisingly invites her inside for a drink.
You can bring the hand grenade.
It's here we learn that Zosha can drink without affecting others in the hive mind. For example, her potentially getting drunk doesn't affect the kid being drunk. It's a fascinating detail about how the hive mind works. I do wonder, if an infected does get drunk, how do they handle it? Are they still always happy, and is there a connection to the others being happy as well? Which, speaking of drunk, Zosha, who may be a little tipsy, she starts rattling off a bunch of fun facts about different alcohols, as Carol couldn't be more entertained. Now, Carol asks about the timeline to her being in the hive mind and learns that it could be weeks, months, or even longer. Now, before moving on, is the project to turn the unaffected to the infected the endgame of this season, or is it going to be the endgame to end this series of watching if and when Carol will ever be turned? Now, Carol brings up the mixed messaging from the hive mind about the limited agency she's given until they figure out how they're going to have her join them.
I mean, I guess I have agency just until I don't.
It's here the hive mind gets real with Carol, offering a pretty interesting metaphor to Carol's situation.
If you were walking by a lake and you saw somebody drowning, would you throw him a life preserver? Of course you would. You wouldn't think, you wouldn't wait, you wouldn't try to get consensus on it, you'd just throw it.
The hive mind believes Carol is drowning and she hasn't accepted it yet. Again, as we discussed earlier, it appears that this is true. She's drowning in grief, depression, anxiety, and it's affected her life. It's clear that Carol hasn't come to terms with addressing her unhappiness and has caused her to become the person who we've seen in these 3 episodes, which again is known as the world's most miserable person. The hive mind sees themselves as saviors, but as we know, it comes with a price. Now, Carol starts describing what she believes it's like to be a part of this all great hive mind. Things are always good and beautiful all the time, as she describes what it was like being at the ice hotel in Norway, but she stops herself. But we see Sosha completes what she was going to say, which is obviously the time she spent in Norway with Helen at the beginning of this episode. Now, of course, this violates the rule that was said earlier, and that's Helen's memories to be off limits. As Carol gets in Sosha's face and almost looking like she was ready to yell at her and make the hive mind get upset because of the negativity, and we know what happens when Carol is negative towards them, but she doesn't. But the threat was implied because we know that this is their weakness. Carol may be feeling the pills combined with the alcohol in her system, thinking there's no way they actually brought her a hand grenade as she picks it up and removes the pin. As Zosha calmly takes the grenade and tosses it out of the window and it explodes. Her removing the pin from that grenade, to me, almost mirrors Carol acting in a way of self-destruction, a kind of a metaphor and a literal explosion of her own eternal turmoil. Now we see the aftermath caused by the hand grenade as Sosha slowly walks out and she passes out with a wound on her back from the debris from covering Carol when the hand grenade went off. As Carol again shows, despite her dislike of the hive mind and Sosha, she's still a person who cares to help someone in need as she's about to get help, but before passing out, Sosha lets her know that help is on the way. I am curious to know what's going to happen with Carol's house because we see the front of her house is damaged, and I wonder if she's going to be forced to temporarily move out while the hive mind fix this issue. I don't see Carol permanently moving out and moving into a new house because, again, like we spoke about, she doesn't want to move away because this is a house that she shared with Helen. Now, as we come to a close of this episode, it's now morning, and at the hospital, awaiting the news on Zosha, out comes a DHL employee letting her know that Zosha's going to be okay despite losing some blood and getting some bumps and bruises. Again, I point out, Carol didn't have to wait in the hospital to learn if Zosha was going to be okay, which shows me that she cares. Now, Carol wants to know why the hell they gave her a hand grenade to begin with because she was clearly being sarcastic, as she proceeds to ask if they would give her another one even after what happened, and they would. This is so interesting to me because this level of not being able to distinguish, the hive mind not being able to distinguish someone being serious and someone being sarcastic, you would think with all the knowledge that they have of the hive mind that they will be able to tell the difference, but clearly they can't. It's almost like having all the book smarts in the world, but they lack common sense. Carol goes on and mentions if they would give her a tank or a bazooka, and they would. But Carol brings up, what about an atom bomb? Now, there's a slight hesitation on the hive mind's part, but if requested, they would weigh the pros and cons with Carol, but ultimately, yes, they would give her an atomic bomb because
we would move heaven and earth to make you happy, Carol. Would you like an atom bomb?
The look on Carol's face, almost similar to the one back in Norway, says everything. Carol is realizing that they would give her anything that she requests. I think Carol now has a bright idea in her mind, now knowing that there are no limits to what they wouldn't do to make her happy. Here's what I would do if I was in Carol's shoes, and maybe she's thinking the same thing. We know that it's in their nature to turn all the uninfected into one of them and working around the clock to make sure that that happens. But what about this? What if Carol makes a request to take some of the smartest people in the world and have them work around the clock to figuring out a way to reverse the virus and to fix the world? I mean, they couldn't say no, right? Or maybe at the very least, it appears that the hive mind can't lie to Carol. So what if she simply asks them if there is a way to reverse the virus? Because again, I don't think they can lie to her. Now, to put my theory to test, I found a sneak peek of a synopsis of what we can expect in next week's episode. As the synopsis reads, Carol tests the boundaries of this weirdly honest world at the expense of her ego. It also says that far away, a resolute individual learns that he's not alone. I'm assuming that's our friend Manusos. So I think it's safe to assume that next week we can expect to see Carol making some major request on the behalf of the hive mind. But again, if I was her, I would just simply ask, is there a way to reverse the virus? And if there is a way, make it work and fix the world. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. Now, of course, we didn't get any major clues to the bigger questions presented to us in the first 2 episodes. For example, why are there only 13 people uninfected? Who was the one that sent the virus? Instead, we got to know more of who Carol is and what she's dealing with internally. I'm really loving the dynamic between Carol and Zosha, but I am curious to see if Zosha will want to be reassigned after experiencing some pretty life-threatening situations with Carol. Again, I definitely think Carol will take advantage of the hive mind, wanting to do whatever she wants to please her, and I look forward to Carol meeting maybe a new best friend in Manusos. With all that said, we've come to the end of this week's breakdown of episode 3 of season 1 of Pluribus. Now the $1 million question is, what did you all think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you all think about this episode? What were some deeper meanings, some Easter eggs, some things you all really took away from an emotional narrative and what you all found out about Carol? Let me know your thoughts about it all in the comments below. Thank you all for watching or listening to this breakdown. If you all have made it to this point in the breakdown, I thank you so much. The special word of the week to put in the comments right now is hashtag shoopity shoop shoop. Now, if you all enjoyed yourself and enjoy my coverage of this week's episode, please remember to hit the like button. But also, if you're watching this on YouTube, once you hit the like button, you can also hype up this video. I would greatly appreciate the support. Also, if you all could share this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show. But also, if you enjoyed yourself, stick around, subscribe to the channel where we discuss things like Pluribus and Welcome to Derry and a ton of other things like movies and shows. So subscribe to the channel today. Now, if you all are listening to this via Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I appreciate you podcast listeners out there. Please do me a favor, share the podcast. Also, leave your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. And consider following the podcast, leaving a review and a rating. I would appreciate it. Alrighty, y'all. Until next time, remember, you all are awesome. Stay safe out there. And remember, if you ever get your hands on a hand grenade, don't be like Carol. All right, y'all. I'll see you again soon.